welcome to Sun Spotlight. I am your host, Charisma, and I am very excited to be back for our second episode of 2021. And today I am super stoked to be interviewing my favorite artist of all time. He also happens to be my big brother. We're joined today by Alloyius McIlwaine, international artist and muralist. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're joining us today. We get to talk all about you and your amazing art that you're doing all over. So I know your story for obvious reasons, but for the folks out there, when did your love for art really begin?
Well, I mean, I've always loved art. My first experiences with art were really coming from comic books, which really taught me how to draw in the first place. And I'm sure you remember all the times when I was a hyper little kid and running around, and mom would sit me down and have me draw her my favorite comic books as like a way to give her a break for me running around like a crazy person. So, that's when I first really kind of studied art and what in structure as far as like how things are put together. That's kind of where I experienced it for the first time, and it kind of just grew from there.
Wow. I also recall you walking around with pencils in between your fingers at all times.
Because I was Wolverine, that's why.
So that had more to do with your love for comic books and superheroes than it did for your love for art, or was it?
Yeah, no, that was just a superhero thing. If you remember though, it wasn't just the claws. I used to always put the towels and the capes around my neck.
Yes,
Remember,
yes,
I wore capes until I was like 8, like yeah, everywhere. I was
yes,
wearing
I
everywhere.
recall.
I remember just like walking around on the avenue and just like having like a towel around my neck, and everybody's probably like, "Why is that weird little kid wearing a towel and like posing?"
I mean, you
But
got to do what you got to do. It's all
yeah,
good. So it's interesting when you have people that are creative and have always been creative, and they're able to take the thing that they love the most and turn it into a career path. So for you, I know, later on in life, you had always done art, you had always taken classes. Once you got to college, you actually transformed your art into what later became your clothing line. So can you talk about that journey a little bit?
well, yeah, I think before a certain point there was this stigma that kind of like that artists starve, and so you at that point you really didn't see a lot of avenues for artists to be commercially successful, because there was always a stigma that oh, artists really don't make any money until after they're dead and their paintings are worth more money. But what's interesting is, and it kind of happened around the same time that I was kind of coming up, which is amazing. I think Keith Haring opened the door for street artists. I think he was one of the ones that really opened the door, but I don't think the hinges really blew off of the door until I think it was really when Banksy and Shepard Fairey and Cause came around. Like all three of those guys um, were, I think, the ones that kind of put street art and graffiti and that kind of thing into a commercial spotlight, because before a certain point it wasn't seen as a commercially valuable thing.
Right.
So you had Cause, who was doing things like he would unscrew the advertisements at the bus stops.
Mm-hmm.
He would like unscrew the advertisements, take them home, and do like interactive paintings with the advertisements and like put them back in the
Wow.
thing. So after he started doing that, that's when people started to notice him and started to bring him on to do real advertisements for the magazines and stuff. And then he kind of grew as a contemporary artist from there. Now his paintings are selling for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he was also one of the artists on Doug, the cartoon,
I
back in
never
the day.
knew that.
Just a little, side note, but he was one of the artists on Doug. But it was kind of a mixture of what happened with him, and obviously everybody knows about the infamous Banksy and his pieces that he was putting up, and knows the identity and the mystery. So that kind of brought it to the forefront. You also had guys like Shepard Fairey, who did like Obama's Hope poster, and
Right.
the Andre the Giant, like the Obey thing that he was posting around everywhere. So I think even though guys like Keith Haring and Basquiat kind of opened the door for that kind of thing, I think those three guys really kind of like pushed street art and graffiti like through the door and was like, this is a commercially valuable thing now. So now, because of that, I'm able to do what I do. But to go back to what the original question was, back then, I remember mom saying, because she liked how creative I was, but she was trying to figure out different ways for me to turn the art into a way that I can make money because of the fact that back then there weren't as many
Artists.
options available
Community.
for artists. So, and the honestly, even before she said that, the idea always appealed to me. Like even in high school, before I really started the clothing line, I was just looking back at some of my old notebooks and stuff just laying around, and I was sketching clothing even back then before she had mentioned it. So like when she brought the idea to the table, and then I was kind of like, yeah, I definitely want to do this. And then
So you're painting murals all over the world. You're painting
Mhm.
these beautiful pictures. You know, people are seeking you out to do incredible pieces, custom pieces. But prior to you making the move to murals and paintings, you really got your start, you know, years ago with your clothing line. And one of the most intriguing things that I found about your clothing line when you first started it was the fact that you named it Culture's Clothing. So, what was the inspiration behind that?
So the inspiration behind that was I was just when I was starting the clothing line, I was trying to think of something that really spoke to who I was as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a very diverse background as far as like ethnicity and stuff. And it was just something that was always really interesting to me, especially going to the school like Friend Select. And I remember just um, even from second grade. With the Quaker values, I remember just being introduced to different cultures. They used to take us on field trips and just take us to different things where we can learn about like Jewish culture and African culture and Chinese culture. And I just thought that was so interesting. It was always so intriguing to me to see how, how obviously, all human life kind of started in one place. And as people branched off, they just developed different cultures and habits and practices. And I just thought that was a really interesting thing because on top of that, because of how many different cultures and practices there are around the world, you get so many different art styles. And so I thought it was just really cool to try to like tap into like doing my like interpretation of what certain art styles were and just showing how all cultures could have something beautiful or interesting about them to try to like present to the rest of the world because we're even though we have so many differences there's so many similarities too, and I thought that I really wanted to do something to try to bring us closer together. And sometimes you can do that with art because you get powerful messages. I think art is one of those things that can cross demographics and language barriers and all kinds of things because you can create a symbol that means more than words may. You know what I mean? So that was the whole purpose behind choosing that name and kind of pushing that idea forward. I was trying to show that all cultures had something beautiful or interesting about them that I wanted to share with people.
Beautiful.
Thank
Oh.
you.
And to your point, you know, when it comes to art, it's one of those things that, like you said, you know, language barriers are no longer barriers. You know, you
Mhm.
can go any place in the world and look at a piece of art and it speaks to you, whether you speak the same language or not as another person.
Mhm.
So that's a beautiful way to connect cultures, if you will. See what I
Mhm.
did there?
I did.
And so moving forward, you know, you have this beautiful clothing line that is diverse and, you know, speaks to different cultures and different people all over the world. From there, you really started to transition more to expressing your art and putting your art on canvas and then eventually to murals. So can you just talk a little bit about that transition for you?
Well, what's interesting is that I remember when I was first starting to do the canvas paintings and stuff, and people were asking, they were like, "I didn't know that you painted," and I'm like, "This, like all the designs from the clothing line. That's the house."
Putting them on canvas now.
It's just funny that people didn't put the two and two together. So, I think that as I went from doing the hand painted stuff to doing stuff that was graphic designed as instead, it kind of opened up for me to do more stuff on canvas because I was still craving like actually taking paint and putting it on things.
Mm.
So even though I was still doing the clothing line and everything, I still wanted to be able to put paint on to some type of fabric on something and to express myself because and we've talked about this before. My brain sometimes is like a broken faucet and it's just like ideas all day, so a lot of times I have to get that out of my system. And so I kind of just started putting my stuff out there, and it just led to more and more opportunities. As far as I was thinking in my head, I said if I kind of just flood the timeline with just art, 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 art constantly, then people would like when art opportunities arose, people would automatically think of me because I'm always posting art, and that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
And so I kind of transitioned from doing canvas paintings to doing murals and stuff. You know, obviously I'm still doing canvas paintings, but uh, I started doing both of them at the same time because it always just appealed to me to paint on a larger surface, just
Mhm.
making things as big as possible. I remember when we were little, just coming downtown to go to school, and we had that big
Oh,
whale mural
yeah.
that was on the side of the building, and we would see all these huge murals all over Philly because
Yeah,
Philly is,
Philly has the most murals of
yeah,
any
for,
city in the world.
yeah, it's any city in the world, which is really interesting because like you have spots like Miami, where you have really concentrated areas where
Like
like there's
Glenwood. Or,
literally art everywhere you see. But the difference between a place like Miami and a place like Philly is, even though you don't have as many areas in Philly where you have art everywhere, there's at least one piece on literally every block in Philly almost. So
which is
yeah,
beautiful to just look around and see all this beautiful art and
yeah.
be,
I think we including the graffiti and the murals that aren't like a part of the mural arts program, because I know they have their own personal registry of how many there are, and I think they have a current registry of about 3,500. But I think as far as the actual total, it's probably more like 4,700 murals that are in Philly.
that's
I
amazing.
have 140 something in Philly myself, so
I was gonna ask you, but you want to take my job today, so that's
yep.
fine.
Well, you know,
Well, one of the things that everyone talks about when they talk about your art is how colorful it is. It's just like a rainbow, an array of colors, and everything that you do is so vibrant. Like, how did you really start to hone in on what your particular style was going to be and the use of color? How did that come to be?
well, I've always been a person that just loved color, even when I was little. Even if you just look at like how comic books are, and that was like my first kind of real experience with art. Comic books are all like explosion and color and all these brightly clad like superheroes that are, you know what I mean. So that kind of thing always appealed to me because it was very vibrant and energetic. But as far as the style itself, it's funny, like when you're an artist, I think the most important thing is to try to find what separates you from everyone else, because there's so many talented people. So you want to try to create some kind of avenue for yourself where people can recognize your stuff right away. And the funny thing is, I wound up coming back to a style that I just did naturally, just
Yeah.
sketching in my books when I was in school. I remember talking to Eric Cohen, and he told me just a little a bit ago, probably like a couple months ago. He was like, "You remember that you used to do something similar to this, like all the way back in seventh and eighth grade. You were doing these like doodles that were like almost like collaged images and stuff." And I was like, you know what? That's totally right. And I feel like I just came back to something that was totally natural for
Yeah.
me. I was experimenting with all kinds of different things for a minute, but then I went back to something that was very natural for me and just kind of developed it into more of a visual language.
Which is probably why it's resonating so much with everyone, because it's innate to who you are and to
Hmm.
the person that you are as an artist. I actually had an interesting story. um I'm an artist too, but a different artist. But I love to doodle. I don't know if that's just getting the creative energy out. I don't know what it is, but I don't know if you remember, but in all of my notebooks I had this one particular flower that I would draw all the
I
time
remember. Yep.
corner. Like every time I would, take a break, I'm supposed to be paying attention to the teacher or professor, whatever. Like I'm doodling this same little flower. So years later, mom found one of her old notebooks from college. And I'm flipping through the notebook and I find that same exact flower. And she had no recollection of drawing this flower. And I don't even know what made me want to draw this flower. So I just found it very interesting, especially when you're talking about going back to something that you didn't remember doing. Like some things really are a part of you, and
Hmm.
you don't even realize it until you realize it. So,
It's also funny how energy works. That kind of thing's passed down, you know.
absolutely. So, one of the other amazing things that you've been able to do, in addition to painting 140, how many was it? 140?
I think it's somewhere upwards of 140 in Philly, but I think it's probably like 220, 225, something, counting all the other states and
Well, yeah,
country.
that was one of the things I was going to say. In addition to the 140 and counting in Philly, because
Hmm.
you're always working,
Hmm.
you
Always.
have murals all over the country and all over the world.
Hmm.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about number one, where you have murals that people can see outside of Philadelphia, and also the journey of just going to different places and being able to share your art with people all over.
Well, if we're talking about the different spots outside of Philadelphia that I have murals, just bear with me while I kind of recollect some of these.
No worries.
Obviously, I have like three or four in Miami,
Mhm.
Portland, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Detroit. I know I've knocked off 17 states,
California, New York.
California, New York.
Remember for you, because the cool thing is we
There's
get
so
to
many.
travel a lot,
Mhm,
pre-pandemic. I've had the opportunity of traveling with you as you're painting a lot of
mhm.
these places, including internationally, where you painted my face in Morocco.
I did.
Yay! And one of our good friends, Lakara, was just there. I think it was last year or the year before last,
I think
and
it was the year before last.
a selfie
Yeah.
with the mural, which is still there, which I was very happy about. So, in addition to painting all over the United States, you have murals in Morocco, you have murals in Costa Rica, you have a mural in, how many murals was it in France? Six?
Six.
Six last
Yeah.
time. Uh,
Hmm.
there was one in London. I mean, you're just all over.
Hmm.
What is your goal in terms of, continuing to share your artwork all over the country and all over the world? Like, what's the
Well,
next?
before the pandemic started, I was really in the midst of trying to do that 50 state mural tour because like it was one of those things where I feel like you're only on this planet for so long. Like you might as well dream big, like do big things. So I wanted to. I was like looking at the Guinness record and everything, and I was like, I don't think there's anyone who's done a mural in all 50 states and in all of the territories like Guam and Puerto Rico and all those places, and American Samoa. Um, so I was like, I
I'll
was
be
like,
happy to travel with you to all of those places. Just for the
yeah,
record, it's on film, so you can't say that we didn't have this conversation because now it's being documented.
hey,
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything. So, um, no, but that's so, I just thought that was such a cool thing. I'm like, why not do something like that? Why not paint a mural in every? Because for one, I love experiencing new places,
Absolutely.
and two, it's just, it's interesting to share your art in different areas of the world to see how people react. Like one of the really crazy things is I get tagged in my murals that I painted in Paris like maybe once or twice a week almost. And just like every time I get the tag and every time I get the notifications that people are enjoying it over there, it's still such a bug out. I have two of my murals in the official street art guide to Paris, and I'm in there with Banksy and Shepard Fairey and Space Invader, these like major artists. Shout out to
You're a major artist, so that makes sense.
well, thank you. Also, shout out to Christian Gimme, C215 for kind of setting up the original one. So, because he's an entire big shot, and he really hooked me up with the first murals and stuff that I did over there. But that's that's the goal. I just want to spread my art around the world, travel, paint in different places, paint in as many places as I can.
So a lot of the work that you do as far as your murals go, you use spray paint. And one of the things I remember, even when I was talking about us doing this interview, one of the things when I was talking to people about it that they asked was, how do you take something from concept in your head, even if you decide to do, a preliminary outline of what you're going to do, and you do it on a sheet of paper? How do you take something from your head, turn it into something tangible on paper, and then translate that into something as huge as a mural on a wall that might take up, I don't know, the corner of a city, like a city block? Like, how does that work?
Well, there are things as far as scaling and ideas like that you pick up over time. I remember when I was first starting and I was using a box grid, which it's helpful, but it doesn't give you the precision that you need sometimes when you're transferring to larger scale. So I actually picked up a couple tricks from some of the kids overseas who were doing these crazy doodle grids, and they were using that as points of reference. So that helps with scaling. But in general, a lot of times when I'm doing murals, I'm not overly thinking. I'm really just creating, and then sometimes I have to step back and figure out how to make it work. But a lot of times I just go to the wall and I don't think about it like, oh, this is a huge wall. It's just another surface. So it's obviously there's more scale and it's larger and the ideas are larger than a sheet of paper, but I almost just think about it like a large sheet of paper. So just like if I was painting on a large sheet of paper, I'd have to figure out how to proportion wise like scale things out. But that's really what it is to me. It's just a larger surface for me to paint on, which I enjoy, and I love larger surfaces. So a lot of honestly, a lot of times, some of it is serendipitous. Like even the murals, like I just painted the tree mural in Chester,
Mhm.
and I obviously like I knew that I was going to paint a tree, but as
Yeah.
far as shapes and stuff I was going to use, I wasn't going to plot out like the 150 200 shapes that I drew for the tree leaves and stuff. So it was just a matter of figuring out what I wanted to do and like visualizing it in my head and just letting it like flow free. I wasn't overthinking it. I kind of just go a lot of times and then figure out. One of the things I've learned over the years is how to kind of contain some of my crazy art ideas.
Yeah, because I was gonna say it's a running joke in the family, like to be in your head for a day.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot going on up there creatively, which is amazing to see when you see it all come to fruition. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you know,
It
harness
used,
it in or in
it used to
focus.
be like so the problem was before, and I remember even when I was little, I would have trouble talking sometimes and I would stutter, and it wasn't because I had a stutter, it's because I had a hard time concentrating on talking to people because
You
there
were
was there was so much in my head that I had to get out. So
trying to filter it
I
through.
think over time, and I'm still learning how to do that. I had to learn how to control the ideas because like I'm looking back at some of the stuff that I did before, even like a couple of years ago. I was like, oh, this is too busy in these areas because I'm still learning how to kind of calm some of it down so it's not so overwhelmingly crazy because that's how it feels when I'm trying to get it out. So it's still like a learning process continuously to try to figure out how to use my style and flip it and but manage it so that you do have the crazy vibrant color, the shape, and it's still as explosive as I need it to be, but like figure out where I need to calm things down a little bit.
Right.
So that's the thing that I'm still learning and developing.
Well, you mentioned this incredibly gorgeous tree that you just completed as a part of a project that you're doing in Chester. That project is humongous. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, just how incredibly large this project is that you're doing, and what it's for?
So the project that I'm doing right now, it's across from Widener. It's going to be like a housing, apartments and everything. Assuming that probably a lot of the students that are going to be living off the campus at Widener are going to be living there. But it took a while to develop the concepts that we were going to do on the wall because the guy Jimmy that I'm working with in his company, eBuilt, he had different ideas that he wanted for different sections, and I kind of just took um, like he was throwing kind of like a little bit of some ideas at me as far as like what he was looking to do on each wall. But then I kind of just took the basic ideas and did like my crazy version of what he was thinking. So for instance, like he was saying, because they're gonna like do kind of like a not a greenhouse thing, but they want to have like a green roof where they're growing things, and so he wanted one wall to have like a tree on it. And so obviously, like with me, instead of doing like a regular tree, which also would have been nice, I was like, let me do some kind of crazy abstract tree.
Make it an abstract tree.
Right, right. And for the other wall, we were just discussing ideas. And like I'm known a lot for painting women, so we definitely wanted to do a woman, but we also wanted positive messages. So the idea that I came up with was that there would be like a woman kind of like standing in the middle of a garden, and she's kind of like blowing words that have positive messages coming out and just like flowing in the air. So yeah, that's kind of it was just a very organic thing. Like he would throw a general idea at me, and I would just throw the crazy version of the idea back at him. So that's kind of how it happened.
And probably your biggest project to date. Yeah. I mean, scale wise.
As far as like an overall, be just because of the like I've done, I think maybe bigger like singular walls maybe for because the one mural that I did at Second and Washington is like 55 feet by
Yeah,
67
it's
feet.
huge.
So that
I
thing is
remember you wouldn't
massive,
let me get on the lift.
the difference, but it's funny. Yeah. But the difference between that mural and this one is that like I'm doing two murals on the same building that's kind of like that size or
Yeah.
around that same size. And actually, square footage wise, I think the one that I'm doing on the long side that's 115 feet by 28, 29, 30 feet. That's probably actually thinking about it, that's probably the largest one that I've done so far, just square footage
What were
wise.
the dimensions again?
It's about 115 feet long and it's somewhere around 30 feet tall.
I just got exhausted hearing you say that. But I've been loving, watching the process of you creating it from scratch. It's been pretty incredible.
Well, thank you.
So you paint all over the globe, you paint all over the country, you paint these beautiful canvases like the one that's behind you right now. In addition to that, you have a coffee table book that
Yes.
you already have, you have a coloring book that's already out for purchase, you're revamping your clothing line. What's next?
Well, actually,
Foundation.
technically, the coffee table book is the thing that's up next because I'm still working on it. So I think we're going to wrap up work on the coffee table book in probably early February, which means when it comes down to actually getting it printed and out on the market, it's probably not going to be out until like late February, probably more than likely early March. But the coffee table book is called Muses Volume One, which collects all of the women that I've painted over the years. I think it's yes, you're in there several times. But you're funny. You're in there sometimes, and I think the book is really going to be cool and interesting because not only do you have women like the lady in the back here, the canvas paintings. So you have canvas paintings, you have murals. Um, I have a section for like the stickers that I put up all over the place, featuring the murals and the canvas paintings that I've done. And my favorite section of the book is an entire section featuring just women in front of my murals, just like interacting with the murals. And some of them I know, and some of them I don't. So it's just really interesting to seeing all of these people from like all over the world who are enjoying this artwork that I've done. So it's all collected in this one book, Muses Volume One, that'll be out. I'm gonna say early March. It might be out a little sooner, but it's gonna be sometime around late February, early March.
Well, I think that's amazing. And the fact that you've been able to um, continue to spread love and joy and beauty through your art, even in the midst of everything that we've been going through,
Hmm.
as a country and as a world with the pandemic, I think is incredible because people in times of trouble and when people's hearts are heavy, they often look to art as something to uplift their spirits. So folks like you that are able to produce art and give people something beautiful to look at, really helps us move towards healing. So thank you for that.
I actually think it's more important now than ever because actually I've had so many people just reach out to me and tell me like how much it meant to them to just continuously see like bright, colorful, positive things in like these extremely dark times. So I think like a time like now, it's more important than ever to provide people with something beautiful to look at, you know?
And little birdie told me that Barack Obama follows you. Is that true?
On Twitter. I
What? What?
It's so funny because the funny part of that story is that the reason why I found that out is because um it was actually the day before my birthday, which is the current president's birthday, and people were looking for pictures of Obama to troll him for his birthday because he was saying all of these like terrible things, obviously.
Yeah.
So they were looking for pictures of Obama to troll him with, and like people started to notice when they were some of my friends when they were going to his Twitter page to get pictures, they were like, "Did you know that Obama's following you?" And I was like, "No, I did not know that. Happy birthday to me because my birthday is the next day."
Happy birthday. That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
your fan base and your following is, continuously growing because of how much art that you put out there and because it's incredible. You really have carved a niche for yourself, a niche, I should say, for yourself.
Mhm.
I know we have a running joke every time you come out with something new. I ask you, can I have it?
Yeah.
And you continue to be stingy. But at the off camera,
Well, see, I always tell you that like avarice is a problem. Like you can't be greedy. You like because you
I'm
want
not greedy.
you're completely greedy
I have openly said that you are my favorite artist. So I just feel like it makes sense
for
for
you to have everything I ever did.
to give me
Uh-huh.
all of the paintings. Like,
Give
what
you
do
all of them.
you need?
What room would you even have for all of them?
I mean, I could buy another house.
Yeah, you'd have to get one of those like the U-Haul storage
I
things.
would have
Like,
to in order to fit all your art, but
but you also want the actual murals, so like you would have to find somewhere to store the buildings too.
See, the cool thing about what you mentioned earlier is that a lot of times you put your artwork that's on these murals on stickers, and sometimes they're translated into canvases or prints. So there's a way. Like when there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, you can have as many prints as you want, but like,
We'll
but
discuss
I
that.
can't really give you a building.
I
I'll
mean,
just
you could.
okay. I'm fully within my power and right to give you a building.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the painting that's behind you, that's mine too. So, I just want to let the folks out there know where they can follow you, where they can purchase art for themselves, because the thing that everybody needs to know is that in addition to all the murals that you're doing and the canvases that you're doing, you also do custom pieces on other mediums as well. And you basically are available to create whatever people want. So where can people follow you, number one, and where can they support your art and purchase your art?
You know, it's funny every time like I'm doing like a podcast or interview and this like question comes up, I kind of feel like I want to do the like I want to give a shit like check me out here. I want to give a shit, you know, like you can check me out at this way. No, but uh people can find me at my website is alloyiusmcilwaineart.com. My Facebook page, which is probably more updated than even my website, just because you know, it takes less to just upload something to Facebook. Um, is facebook.com/Alloyius McIlwaine Art. You can catch me on Twitter at Cultures Clothing. And those are probably the best places. Like, you know, I obviously have a Twitter
What's your Instagram?
at Cultures Clothing.
So it's Cultural Clothing on Instagram and Twitter.
On Twitter is at Cultures Clothes because before a certain point, like Twitter had like a letter limit, so I couldn't do clothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said the coffee table book is expected around March. People can look out for that.
Yeah, it you know it all depends on how long it's going to take to come from the printer because I know we're going to stop work on it on February 8th. So it's just a matter of how long it takes to from the printer to you know from me taking it to give it to the printer to getting it back, which you know maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So I just have to. That's why I'm telling people probably late February, early March, whenever I can get them back, but it'll be around that time.
Hey, I'm excited because I get a copy first, and you have to sign it for me.
Okay.
Well, I am so incredibly proud of you and the work that you do. You really are my favorite artist, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Bring my faith. I was doing this.
I know I saw you. You're being what you always are, a
Yeah.
big brother.
Yeah.
But I am extremely proud of you. I can't wait to see what you do next. Folks out there, once again, you can find out more about what Alloyius is doing and purchase art of your own at www.alloyiusmcilwaineart.com. Follow him on the socials at Cultures Clothing on IG, at Cultures Clothes on Twitter, and you can also catch him on Facebook. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Sun Spotlight.
My pleasure,
It
little
was my
sister.
pleasure as well, big brother.
And now I'm about to go paint another mural. So
You are. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us for another episode of Sun Spotlight. I'm your host, Charisma, and I'll be back next week and every Thursday at noon. Toodles.